Hello, welcome. I'm Stgy by Sandhya. In this part of the video lecture, as a part of the course Programming for Problem Solving, we will be looking at a topic from Unit 2 that is arrays. Okay, so before we go ahead and look at what is array, let's just analyze a simple example. Imagine we were put in a case where I am asked to suppose probably, add 10 numbers. Question number one, case number one, we are asked to add 10 numbers. How do you add 10 numbers? Int n1, n2, n3, n4, so on, n10, scanf, percentile d, 10 numbers, and then probably, add them. That is method one. Method two, just take a number x, put it in a for loop, repeat it 10 times because we have already seen loops, repeat it 10 times, repeatedly read it 10 times, and add it to sum, like sum is equal to sum plus x kind of thing. But if the question persists and we are asked to, print those 10 numbers along with the sum, or now if we increase and make it 20 numbers or 30 numbers, then what would be the solution? Storing 10 or 20 numbers or 30 numbers? You should be having another alternative that probably makes working with larger set of data easy. So yes, that's the reason why we go to another derived data type called as arrays. So how do we define an array? An array is a derived data type. It's a fixed size collection of elements of similar type, or array is said to be a homogeneous collection of elements stored in contiguous memory locations. What's the meaning of contiguous? Contiguous means adjacent of, or immediately next. The elements are stored in just next locations or adjacent locations, so that the array looks like a collection of similar elements. It's a collection of similar elements which are stored adjacently. Examples is list of employees in a organization, a list of numbers, products and their costs, test scores, example customers and the telephone numbers, etc. So what is the need, or how do what is the reason why which put forth for an array? Array saves memories, they are cache friendly, they have predictable timings, they are easier for debugging, more compact in memory usage, advantages over variables that we have already seen. I can't write 10 variables and 10 percentile Ds inside scanf. Advantages over data structures, non-linear. Non-linear arrangement is little tough to deal with, whereas arrays provide linear arrangement, sequential arrangement. Helps us in the usability of the code, and they support multi-dimensional options also. Okay, so what are all the types of arrays available in C language? Language C supports 3 types of arrays: one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and multi-dimensional. Each of it we'll discuss in depth. One-dimensional arrays is what we're going to go ahead and look at. So what are one-dimensional arrays? A list of items which are arranged in one dimension or which has one subscript, which are put in one dimension in a linear fashion, is known as one-dimensional arrays. Again, they are collection of similar elements stored in adjacent locations. Example, 10 ages of 10 people, like names of 100 people, name which is storing 100 characters, or weight which can store 5 weights. A collection of 5. How do I read it? I will read it as a collection of 10 integers. I read it as a collection of 100 characters. I read it as a collection of 5 floating point values. So how do you declare an array? Just like any other variable that is used in our programming which needs to be declared, in the same way arrays also needs to be declared and then used. So what's the syntax? Data type is data type, space, variable name or the array name, in the bracket size. What is size? Size is a constant which indicates the number of elements the array is holding. So example, let us just take an example for that time being. I'm talking about an integer array, int n of 4, where it stands for a collection of 4 integers. Now, n stands for a collection of 4 integers. What does the computer do? Whenever a declaration is made, generally, whenever an array variable is declared, the computer allocates memory. So how does the memory allocated? What is the amount of memory allocated? Size of array. Memory allocated for array is equal to size of array into size of data type. So memory allocated for array. Here I got to talk. Memory allocated for this array is equal to size of array. What's the size of array? 4 into, if I assume that integer occupies 2 bytes on my machine, then 4 into 2 is equal to 8. So therefore, 8 contiguous bytes of memory, 8 contiguous bytes. A single block of 8 bytes is allocated for n, where the first indexing of an array starts with 0. So therefore, n of 0 holds the first element, n of 1 holds the second element, n of 2 holds the third element, and n of 3 holds the fourth element. And these are the memory addresses. Assuming that these are the memory addresses, then they will be stored in contiguous locations, and the indexing of the array starts from 0 to 3. So therefore, if there is an array of size n, its starting index is at 0 and the ending index is at n minus 1. This needs to be remembered by all of us. If there is an array of size n, starting index is 0 and ending index is n minus 1. Yes, that's all that needs to be noted. How do you initialize a one-dimensional array? One-dimensional array can be initialized in two ways. One is at compile time and the other is at runtime. So we'll take a look at the compile time initialization. The process of initializing or assigning the values to an array during compilation of a program or during program compilation or statically during declaration is known as compile time initialization of an array. So this is one of the examples where I put, this is the syntax data type array name of size is equal to list of values. Imagine there is an integer array A of 4 elements 10, 20, 30, 40. This is how it looks like. At 0 goes 10, at 1 goes 20, at 2 goes 30, at 3 goes 40. This is what the machine does. Is there any other versions of this? Yes, language C supports like quite a few versions. One is with missing size. Can I have the size missing but with the initializers present? Yes. What does the computer do? Whenever it sees such a declaration statement, the machine first counts the initializers and then internally updates the size to be 4. So therefore, it is similar to writing something like int a of 4 is equal to 10, 20, 30, 40, but this is valid. It is allowed in C language. Yes. Can I do it with fewer initializers? I have an array of size 4 and I'm initializing only with 2 elements. Yes, when you initialize with only 2 elements, the first 2 elements will be the values that you initialize. So a of 0 goes 10 and a of 1 goes 20, and the other 2 values will be filled with 0 because the data type is integer, and it will be filled with 0.0 if it is float and null if it is character. Yes, next goes with another type of compile time initialization. If I want to initialize a set of values to 0. Yes, if there is an array A of 100 that needs to be initialized to 0, the simplest and the easiest way of doing it is simply write int A of 100 is equal to, in the open bracket 0, flower bracket close semicolon. So what does it do? When I write 0, the first element is basically initialized to 0, but because the remaining 3 elements are uninitialized, partial initialization comes into picture and initializes all the other values to 0. So therefore, it becomes something like this. Okay, now, yes, language C allows you to have less initializers, but will it allow you to have more initializers? Sorry, the answer is no. It's valid or illegal statement in C. You cannot have more number of initializers. What's the other type of initialization? There's one more compile time initialization where you statically allocate. You can also write A of 0 is equal to 1, A of 2 is equal to 2, A of 3 is equal to 4, like that. Individual elements, initialization is also possible, but that becomes a compile time technique. Now we are talking about runtime initialization. Is there any option of runtime? Yes, runtime is using for loop because the for loop iterates and gets to a next value using in the run of a program. So therefore, this is an example for runtime using for loop, and there is another option where you can read directly and put it into the elements. But this is quite useless because we are not okay with this. So therefore, we have moved to arrays. The advantage of array is by a single for loop, you can traverse any number of elements in an array. It might be 100, it might be 10, it might be 1000. Okay, so that's why this is the most preferred runtime initialization technique over this. Yes, how do you read and write a one-dimensional array? Yes, reading and writing requires one loop because one-dimensional array iterates with one loop. So you read using scanf percentile amp percentile d, the data type of the element, ampersand array of I, and you print it by writing printf percentile d array of I. Array is the name of the array. Index square brackets index is the position. Position starts with 0 and ends at n-1 if there are n elements. Okay, so here is a simple example. I have an array of 5 elements. I'm reading it and I'm printing it. So therefore, I was asked to enter 5 integers. I entered 10, 30, 70, 90, and 100. And the elements are, this is how you get the output. So yes, this is another program where we are trying to find out the minimum and maximum in a list. This is also a lab program. You can see there. So this is how you read your elements, write your elements. The logic is pretty simple. You try to compare your elements. This is also an example for working with arrays. Sum, you make a sum and then, divided by n to get the average. So yes, what are all the advantages and disadvantages? We close by just seeing this. Yes, the array have got its own set of advantages and disadvantages. Random access is possible using arrays. They allow the code to be finished in less number of lines. They have an easy of access over variables. Traversal becomes easy and the access is random. Whereas the disadvantages include arrays of fixed size. Array material of whatever it is fixed size. So therefore you can't have, random sizes during the program run. Arrays are not dynamic, they are static version, and insertion and deletion literally takes more time. if you want to insert in between, if there, suppose if there is an array of 10 elements and you want to insert some element into, position number 5 or position number 6, that becomes difficult because a lot of elements needs to be moved, shifted. So that's why inserting or deleting element into already existing array is a tough job. So yes, before we close, I recommend you to take a pen and a paper and try to do these programs on your own. Try to print the elements of an array in reverse order and try to print a program in which you are figuring out the number of times a particular element is present in a particular list. And also try to find out the sum of n elements of a floating point array. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.